And finally, we're remembering Sidney Poitier, the first black man ever to win an Oscar for Best Actor, who died yesterday at 94 years old. The icon's death was announced early this morning and commemorated by the Congressional Black Caucus, who honored the legendary artist's life and legacy on Twitter, saying they are deeply saddened by the news of trailblazer, humanitarian, and cultural icon Sidney Poitier's passing. May his memory be a blessing. Indeed. For more, let's bring in Mike Muse, ABC News contributor and host of SiriusXM's award-winning show, The Mike Muse Show. Thanks for being here, Mike. On this sad moment, I got to tell you, growing up, my mom loved Sidney Poitier as he was a box office bonanza, a huge star, and she loved the Guess Who's Come to Dinner and all those movies, Lilies of the Field. Well, what is his legacy more broadly, though? Not just in show business, but in general. What do you think he meant to the country, to people of color in particular?
Well, first of all, your mother had good taste in films and in actors. I just want to shout out to your mother, Terry. You know what's very interesting? The timing is almost surreal. I just finished a holiday in the Bahamas, and I was at this fantastic space called The Landing, a restaurant and resort, and I was talking with one of the legacy granddaughters of it, Alessandra, and it just so happened that we stopped on a picture that they had in the restaurant of Sidney Poitier, and we began to talk about who he was and his legacy and the way that the Bahamian community embraces him as a hero is exactly the way that the world embraces him, and as well as America embraces him as a hero and as an icon. You know, I don't look at this passing as a sad occasion, although it's always, you know, something sad when we lose someone. But Sidney Poitier had a life well lived. He was a man who had a life that was full of activism. He was a man of the arts. He was a man who leaned into his black identity so that America and the world could see the fullness of black life. That black life could be intelligent and graceful and funny and gregarious and bold and intentional and emotional and sophisticated, all in the times and periods that he was making these movies where we saw blacks as one-dimensional. Sidney brought a three-dimensional look into what blackness could be. And also, too, he did that not just in his acting that he presented on the screen, but Terry, he was very intentional behind the scenes to make sure that the writing and that the character wasn't limited. He accepted the responsibility of that, of carrying the weight of his people with him, of the black community, for representation for the nation. And he made sure he worked with the studio producers and heads to ensure that the films and roles that he did gave black people range. And we see that today. I think every black actor in Hollywood stands on the shoulders of Sidney Poitier, because what we're seeing now is young Hollywood, even, you know, relatively seasoned veterans, really lean in to make sure that the characters have range that they're playing. But it all started, you know, with Sidney Poitier.
That's great. You know, I did not know that he actually took an active role in the studio system with the producers and writers on the roles he played. And I can't imagine in the Hollywood of those times, you know, that took guts. I just want to mention, just to include countless public figures paying tribute to him. We're going to touch on this, including Oprah. She remembered the actor for being, quote, a mentor, friend, brother, confidant, wisdom teacher, and one with the utmost and highest regard and praise for his most magnificent, gracious, eloquent life. What else can you say about him? Also, you know, he won was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama for what he meant to this country. And, you know, once again, I don't want to bring her up too much, although God rest her soul, she's not with us, and I think she'd feel closer to her right now with this memory. But also that he was attractive to across lines, not just an impressive actor and a talent, but a matinee idol as well. How important was his glamour, his brilliance as an actor and his glamour as a movie star to our country, do you think?
Terry, that's why I like talking to you. You're leaning into something really nuanced right now. But before I talk about the nuance of your statement, that role, particularly for the audience who wants more context to that, is Porgy Best. He was hesitant to take on the role of Porgy Best because he wanted to make sure that blacks weren't seen as a caricature, and that blacks were seen as being multidimensional. And his concern to the studios was that he didn't want to do an injustice to his people, i.e. black people, where he would see and represent them in a wrong way that was a caricature. So that's how intentional he was with that. But when you talk about his look and his beauty, the times, Terry, we're getting into colorism, where at the time it was about more individuals of a lighter hue, right? And where the individuals of a lighter hue were giving more roles within Hollywood and had more ability to do more range outside the stereotypical maid, butler, service work. Normally, if you were a dark-hued or dark-skinned, those roles weren't readily available to you. So to see a man of a dark hue that had the ability to be a leading man in Hollywood was a revolutionary act unto itself that broke through the barriers of colorism that existed and unfortunately still exists in our society. But back then it was even more prevalent than ever that he was able to break through within that one, because unfortunately in Hollywood, looks do matter. And oftentimes, Terry, you will see where they won't put the black who could be the lead for the film even on the poster. Sometimes they'll put them in more of a secondary position on the picture, and their default to justifying that is that it doesn't travel well globally. Well, Black Panther shattered that narrative and became one of the #1 box office globally domestically to do. And you mentioned something about Presidential Medal of Freedom that he got recognized by presidents of the United States. There's something interesting about the work that he did, and we love, and I love too as well, to reference Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. But Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was about, as you know, Terry, as your mother knows all too well, it was about interracial marriage, interracial dating. At the time when that movie was released 6 months ahead, 17 of the 50 states still saw it illegal for interracial marriages to exist until the Supreme Court came along in 1967 to overturn that, to make interracial marriages legal. And then also, too, in his fantastic role in Midsummer Night, I hope I didn't butcher that, a lot in my head, but that was done as this black man coming from the North as a detective to investigate a murder in the heat of the night, to investigate a murder in Mississippi. Yeah, investigating murder in Mississippi, and that was done about 3 years after the civil rights legislation passed. And so he was always at this crossroads of social construct. He was also always at the crossroads to represent nuance and really sensitive social issues of our time and present them so elegantly on the film to hold up a mirror for America to see and to witness.
That's really well put. I just want to reference one quote from Sidney Poitier that we found. During the Civil Rights Movement, he was active, of course, but he also was very conscious, as you have pointed out, of the limits, even with his courage and character, that he was facing. And he said, I was struck by this. He said, if the fabric of the society were different, I would scream to high heaven to play villains and to deal with different images of Negro life, as it was called at the time, that would be more dimensional. Even with all of his largeness of character, he still ran into he wanted to play the bad guy. I don't know, he might have in a movie that I missed, but I thought that was eloquent as an artist as well as a social activist.
And Terry, what I gather from that is a couple of things. One, the roles of limitations that often are placed on black actors in black Hollywood. But also, two, I gather from that, too, the dichotomy of, but he was willing to accept the responsibility to forge ahead a path so that this next generation of what we're seeing right now of young black Hollywood could come through and play a cross-section of roles in which we are not used to seeing in blacks. We literally now have black superheroes in a way that we've never seen before. We have black leads now of Star Trek, which was been almost unthinkable. Then we see leads now, black people being judges and being the leads of shows now. And so we're finally seeing the range of blackness. But that took the strength of a Sidney Poitier. It took for us to stand on the shoulders of him. And Terry, most important, Sidney Poitier was viewed as not just a good black actor, but just one of the best actors of, at the time, his generation, and now of all the generations. And that's something something that black actors to this day still struggle with, is to make sure they're getting the credence of just being a great actor versus just being a great black actor. Terry, we never hear people talk about Meryl Streep as being a great white actor. We always hear Meryl Streep as one of our greats. And so I think a lesson that we can take away from his passing as we celebrate his life is to lose the moniker of great black actors and just call us great actors.
That's a great point, Mike. And I am thinking now of Denzel Washington, who's going to be coming out in the movie Macbeth. He's going to play Macbeth in the Coen Brothers movie. And I was just thinking how great Sidney Poitier might have been in that role as well. But Denzel stands on the shoulders of giants, as they say. Mike Muse, great talking with you again. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you, Terry.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.